Hey, it's another Thursday, or actually, it's not Thursday, it's Wednesday, because tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So, Nick and I decided that we do a special little Thanksgiving episode just to say howdy to everybody and give y'all the Thursday off and maybe change the tone a little bit. This is a time of Thanksgiving, of remembrance, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Nick, how the heck are you?
I'm doing well. I have a lot to be thankful for, not only this year, but certainly today. We want to take a quick moment here to give a shout out to a new friend of the show, our dear friend Lita down in San Antonio, who's tuning in tonight. We send peace, prayers, and positivity to all of our friends and family, and thank you all for tuning in.
Wonderful. Lita, it's nice to have you on board. Um, so Thanksgiving, right? Everyone's telling us what we're thankful for, but I kind of wanted to go back to the original, right? Not necessarily the pilgrims, right? Because we hear that story all the time, but the reason we celebrate this as a holiday goes back to what happened during the Civil War in 1863. It was Abraham Lincoln who declares the first national Thanksgiving holiday. Now, don't get me wrong; it wasn't until 1941 December, it was just like a week or two after Pearl Harbor, that Thanksgiving is actually declared a national repeating holiday. Up till then, I mean, don't get me wrong; it had been a tradition for presidents to call Thanksgivings locally, things like that. But it wasn't until 1941 that it becomes an official federal holiday. But they point back to, and the reason it's celebrating, on the day it is because of Abraham Lincoln, 1863, middle of the Civil War. He gives a Thanksgiving proclamation, and I thought it would be nice to go ahead and read that original uh, declaration and maybe talk about it a little bit and see if it has any impact on how we view the world we live in today. Now, I actually went and pulled the original Harper's Weekly article because I found it reprinted in a lot of a lot of websites, but they've edited a lot out, and when you read them, they kind of feel edited. So I went back and I found a photograph of the original article, and it's kind of obvious that it has been edited a lot, and I think some of you will understand why once I begin reading it. A proclamation by the President of the United States of America. The year that is drawing toward its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added which are so extraordinary in nature that they can not fail to penetrate and soften even the heart, which is habitually insensible to the ever watchful providence of Almighty God. In the midst of a civil war of unequaled magnitude and severity, which has sometimes seemed to invite and provoke the aggressions of foreign states, peace has been preserved with all nations. Order has been maintained, the laws have been respected and obeyed, and harmony has prevailed everywhere, except in the theater of military conflict, while that theater has been greatly contracted by the advancing armies and navies of the Union. The needful diversions of wealth and strength from the fields of peaceful industry to the national defense have not arrested the plow, the shuttle, or the ship. The axe has enlarged the borders of our settlements and the mines as well of iron and coal as the precious metals have yielded even more abundantly than heretofore. Population has steadily increased, notwithstanding the waste that has been made in the camp and the siege and the battlefield. And the country, rejoicing in the consciousness of augmented strength and vigor, is permitted to expect continuance of years with large increase of freedom. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged as with one heart and voice by the whole American people. I do, therefore, invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and prayer to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also with humble penitence for our national perverseness and disobedience commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union. In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington this 3rd day of October in the year of our Lord 1863, and of the independence of the United States the 88th. Abraham Lincoln.
I believe you knew how to put a sentence together.
Yeah.
As the great emancipator, I would imagine that you would have to know how to bring people together, how to strike a balance of liberty and security. And I was not as aware. You and I were, of course, talking about some pre-production stuff earlier and discussing, some of the things we wanted to share tonight. And I'm really impressed with the historical impact. I mean, two major parts of our history, of course, 1863. You can't escape not only the massive symbolism behind that year and that president with regard to things like Gettysburg and the Emancipation Proclamation, but also the fact that it tied into 1941, which of course is tied into our hearts and minds eternally as a date which will live in infamy because of our inclusion into World War II with the attack of Pearl Harbor. But I think it makes it more, it actually makes it more special, and especially in a year where we're all heartbroken about not being able to see family. I want to take a moment as well here to send my peace, love, prayers, and light to my family, who unfortunately I won't be able to be with. We're going to have a call tomorrow, and that'll be great. It'll be great in the world of Zoom. But my father, this is his holiday. This is the one day that my dad really, really goes for. And he's always told me since I was a child that the reason it was so special to him is because the singular celebration is about family. And in a time when I think so many of us crave that, it's so interesting to see how this holiday was born out of, not just Charlie Brown and Snoopy and Peanuts and watching, the great Thanksgiving, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, of course, but also this feeling that, this ties back to, 1620 and when we had things going on and, in the country and the Indians eating with the Pilgrims. And I think sometimes those stories feel a little distant, and pulling them up 263 years, and then pulling them up, another almost 70 years after that, is impactful for us to keep our hearts and minds set on. So I'm grateful that you shared that, because it really tied into parts of history that I think are very, very prominent in our American psyche.
Well, this is one of those things that I think a lot of people forget. The original Thanksgiving that was held by the Pilgrims came after some horrific times. They died, they got to the New World. It was in the winter. And of course, they were crammed on those ships. Like, people forget, there wasn't really room on those ships. Those were not, they were not on a cruise ship. They were basically stuck below in very, very cramped quarters. They didn't have indoor toilets or things like that. So, many people were ill. People had died on the way people were ill by the time they got there, and they got there just in time for winter. I think of the 100, and it was like 100 and I forget the actual numbers, 100, 150, 160. I think only 48 survived that first winter.
Yeah.
It was catastrophic, the death toll. Just because, again, they landed there was literally nothing there. This was the wilderness. And it was after that, after they had suffered and toiled and built something, that they said, you know what? It's out of this pain that we can be thankful. Same thing here. Abraham Lincoln, middle of the Civil War. It's time we have to remember thankfulness. And what I love is he doesn't shrink from the pain. The pain doesn't take away from being grateful. It doesn't take away from being thankful to God. And it's not just, well, a general sense of thankfulness. It's thankful to God. It is absolutely recognizing that all of these good things are coming from God. And it's born out of that pain. And same thing with 1941. We had literally just been attacked. Our Pacific fleet was basically gone.
Minus the carriers, which of course.
Minus the carriers. But
shout out to our Navy friends and service members out there that are doing wonderful things on behalf of our country. And but you're right. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, you had battleships that had been destroyed, and you know, of course, the Arizona going down the way she did, and the Oklahoma capsizing the way she did, and 2,500 service members and civilians losing their lives on that day. And I just want to take a moment, if I could jump in. I mean, I really want you to know the impact it's made on me personally, just thinking about this tie to World War II. That's substantial. That's substantial. I was not aware of the 70% death count that you just mentioned in that first winter. I think we've all, like we do with history, we've kind of romanticized it. The Pilgrims came over and they were wearing black and white and hats with buckles, and they met these Indians, and the Indians were there and they taught them how to plant corn, and everybody had a big dinner, and then everybody was just cool. Of course, the flip side to that is that sometimes that story is also taken in a very different direction. But I think the factual part about the tremendous journey, and your point could not have been more spot on about, this romanticism again about what these ships were. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria were like the size of, 4 Buicks, a Hyundai, and a Porsche, and they sailed across waters in the North Atlantic that were excruciating. I can't even fathom the concept of how that turbulent journey must have been. And then, as you said, to arrive in Massachusetts in the winter. Welcome.
Okay, just for clarification, you're not suggesting that the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria were what the Pilgrims came over on. You're just using that as sort of another one of those things that's often romanticized, right?
I'm using the concept that we have an image that Columbus and his ships and these early sailors and these early discoverers and this romantic side that, like, they walked off the ship and they were like, I love the smell of America in the morning. These ships, these transports at the time were so tiny, were so small.
They had no indoor plumbing.
This is not. This is these ships, these explorers. Columbus, of course, arrived in, of course, what we now know were the West Indies. But it was about, you're looking at a difference of about 130 years, 128 years. What you're looking at, and it wasn't like navigation. They just busted out their Siri and went on their iPhones and said, hey Siri, discover America. These 3 ships, forgive me, I pulled the wrong 3 ship names from Columbus to here. I simply mean
you're using the fact that we often romanticize,
the transportation methods available at such time. When you see a carrier strike group, or you see an aircraft carrier today that carries 5,000 people, that's nuclear powered, that doesn't have to charge for another 35 years, 40 years, 60 years, 20 years, who cares? I mean, it's not people sitting. And the other part of that, aside from the turbulent waters, let's go in the opposite direction. Guess what happens when the wind stops?
Oh yeah.
You sit for what could be I mean, maybe you have oars, maybe you've got capacity to generate propulsion. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that we highlight the point that you raised. I mean, you're looking at 60+% of the new founding arrivals to this land died. Let's put that into context. That would be 200 million Americans. So
Yeah.
the fact that they survived to get over here, I understand why many of them must have been giving thanks, back to your original point, to get us where we were. Must have been providence, because to simply survive was tremendous. I mean, literally a miracle.
Yeah. That's how they viewed it. They viewed it as the hand of God, the hand of providence. And again, flash forward, Abraham Lincoln, Civil War. The Civil War was bloody. It was terrible. It was costly. And yet he says, let's give thanks. And what I love is he's even pointing, is that Abraham Lincoln then points out, hey, there's some bad stuff going on, not just the war. It's not like everything's going great with the war and everything's cool. No, he talks about the sins of the country. He talks about how terrible and costly everything has been. He said, let's remember the widows. Let's remember these people who are dying, right? But we still need to say we still need to be grateful to the God that has blessed us. And what I love is, let me repeat this this line where he actually, after talking about, it's like, even in God's anger and dealing with and with our national sins, he has remembered mercy, which is why he says, he being Abraham Lincoln says, it has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged, meaning the blessings, as with one heart and voiced by the whole American people. That line is unfathomable today. And it's easy to say, well, it's because of how divided we are. Hold on. This was a nation where literally people were shooting at each other. They were, and it wasn't like how again, go watch any Civil War movie. If you don't understand what the kind of weapons they were using, these were now, but we were finally getting to things that were a little bit more than muskets. But these were still black powder, one fire. Then you stop, you got to pour the powder in, you got to muzzle load the whole thing, and then you got to get it going again. This was ugly warfare. It wasn't line up and just shoot each other like it was in the American Revolution, but this was still very profoundly bloody. Basically, you got one or two volleys off, then it became a charge, and you were bayoneting people to death. This was horrific. If you really want to understand how terrible this was, you can look at some of the battlefield scenes where there are men who are lying dead, who their shirts have been around their stomachs have been pulled open because the soldiers themselves they knew they were hit. That's all they knew, but they were hoping that they would still be alive, that they could survive. So they were checking to make certain they weren't gut shot, because they knew there was no coming back from that because of the level of technology. And so when you realize they had ripped open their shirts in the vain hope that maybe they could survive their injury, but of course they can't. And it is in this time that he says, but let us remember the goodness of God and the blessings he's given us on this nation. 2020 is terrible in a lot of ways for a lot of people. There are a lot of family members who are not coming home this year. Some of it from COVID, some of it from the lockdowns, some of it from other diseases, some of it from accidents. There's a lot of pain that's happened this year. There are a lot of businesses that will never reopen. They were shut down. Their entire livelihoods that were lost. There are people who, through the shutdown, through the riots, there are people who've lost everything. This has been a terrible year for a great large number of people, and they should be remembered. But we should also stop to remember the goodness of God in this. In the same way that they were dealing with sins then, we are dealing with sins today. We can have discussions as to what they are later. And believe me, we will. But we can remember the goodness of God. We're still prosperous. Most people are still making it through. We're still powerful. And unlike most other societies, I know it's easy to look around and say, but man, if they actually manage to steal this election, then it's over. Or any number of things. But we can still fight back. We can still, and without resorting to violence, we can still make pleas through a legal system that does work given time. We haven't lost everything yet. We still have a chance to retain this great nation. And if that were the only thing we could be grateful for, we should be supremely grateful for that. Because it's not over. God is watching out for us. He has met our needs. And for those who have suffered, he is meeting them in ways we often can't see. But he is there too. We should be thankful to God that we have an opportunity. If you can hear the sound of my voice, then you have a chance to make the world that you live in a better place. Maybe you can't affect the things that are national, but you can affect the things that are local. And God will be there with you while you're doing that. Maybe you're still in a position to bring hope to people who've lost it. We should be thankful to God that you're still there to bring that hope. There's a great deal to look at 2020 and say this was a terrible year, but there's far more to be thankful for. 2020 is hard, but it's in solemnity, reverence, and with gratefulness that we should approach the throne room of our God and say thank you. No matter how bad it's been, if you can hear me, say thank you, because you've got one more day to make something better of it. That's a lot. There's a lot of people around the world who can't say that. There have been the vast majority of humans who've ever lived couldn't say that. They were locked in a system of oppression for their entire lives, for their fathers' lives, for their children and their grandchildren, on and on throughout generations. If you can hear me, you have an opportunity unparalleled in human history to make the world you live in better and freer, more equal, and more prosperous than it has ever been. And for that one reason, we should also be thankful, because this is a privilege given by God to a very, very small number. And you are among them, Americans. Let's
Today,
be thankful.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
Today there was one of those kind of magnificently mysterious ways in which things kind of come together. Recently I purchased a home, and my agent was helping me with for a very dry part of buying a home is when you get the option check. Anyway, that's the place, hey man, we're feeling good. So excuse me. Clearly getting emotional about an option check.
Well, there's a lot to be emotional about when it comes
Absolutely.
to options. Yeah.
No, but to our listeners and our fans, excuse me. No, what was so wonderful about it was the gentleman who brought the check over. We got to talking, and I'll keep his name private out of his privacy because we want to make sure that we always do that on the show. But he explained to me that having been a ranger and having been trained, that while he was in training, 9/11 happened. I
Mm.
don't mean metaphorically. I mean he was in a training scenario when the exercise was stopped. He was pulled off of the training scenario and sent downrange.
Oh wow.
And as a ranger, you can imagine what some of those soldiers have seen. He completed 8 deployments. 8. I've had friends and family that have served and known people and been a part of that. And many of them have served multiple tours. I don't know any of them that are at 8. And so I want to bring that up because I want to tie this back to the original comment and the original reading you provided with Lincoln. We use phrases nowadays that are so, I don't want to say they're hyperbolic, but they've become so common. Like, this is the new normal. No, it isn't. This is abnormal. This is not normal. Locking yourself away and wearing a mask to go to the grocery store is not normal. It's not the new normal. It's the new abnormal. And we're going to work as we have as a species to overcome the challenges, and we will rise to the occasion as we have. But to tie back to the Civil War, when you were speaking about when this holiday was first drafted from the President of the United States and how he proclaimed it officially, let us remember that more people, or a number rivaling that, of Vietnam died in 3 days at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
10 years in Vietnam. It took 3 days in Gettysburg, if not less. I bring this up because the gentleman that I spoke with today, who had 8 tours, shared with me quotes that he liked. And I'm going to paraphrase one, and then there's another here that I see. And he shared with me as a ranger that what was something that we should all be mindful of is war is terrible. And it's good that it's terrible because you don't want to grow fond of it. And many times, those who seem to clamor for war are those who've never really been near one. He explained to me that more Rangers were taking their lives than were actually dying in combat. And I recently had someone reach out to me and explain how their spouse, a service member, took their life. And I know this sounds like a downer, and I promise that's not the direction I want to go. What I want to say is there's always somebody that has it worse. There's always somebody that needs your love. There's always somebody that could use a kind word or a prayer or a fist bump until we're back to shaking hands. There's always somebody that you can be kind for and towards. There's always somebody that you can love. You don't have to be an Army Ranger with 8 deployments to know that war is a terrible, terrible thing. But what I appreciated about what he shared with me is that he said, caring for your guys doesn't stop when you take off the uniform and you come home. In fact, if anything, that's when it becomes lifelong. I am so thankful that I had time today to listen to his story, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in our own head. and say, well, we're more divided than we ever have been. Are we? I don't think we are. And I want to take this moment right now to tell our fans, our families, our friends, through our faith and through our fears, that I love you all. I'm thankful for all of you. I miss you. I can't wait to see you all again, whenever that may be. But we will not give up the fight. We will constantly strive ever for the light. And in that, we show our gratitude to God for our thanks.
Amen. No, amen. I mean, that is the truth.
And now I want to go watch Charlie Brown and I want the traditions. I want my father's stuffing, and I want to watch, I don't even care who's playing. I've kind of fallen off watching football, to be honest, for reasons X, Y, Z. But the truth is, this is when we have it. I don't feel sorry for myself in the least, because guess what? I'm one of millions of people that's missing family. And
Yep.
and some people have it much, much, much worse. So I'm thankful for you, Alex. Thank you for doing this show with me. I'm thankful for this show. I'm thankful for the platform that we have to be able to come on here. And as my beautiful, amazing, and strong grandmother used to say, hey, I'll share you. I'll share you my thoughts. My thoughts in a nickel will get you a cup of coffee. And I love to have a platform that does that for us. And if it's to do nothing else than to show us that it was definitely not the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, then that's worth it alone.
It is worth it. Yes. No, I mean, so here's the key though. How many shows would have pointed that out and said, hey, whoa. It was the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria that the Pilgrims came on.
Yeah, it was Columbus. Yeah.
No, they came over on the Love Boat.
No, exactly. They came over on a Carnival cruise, but that's you didn't mention the fact that that's when you mentioned earlier. I went on a cruise. We're getting a little off topic here, but let's have fun with it. I went on a cruise. I went on a Carnival cruise, and it was right around that time, if you guys remember, when they were all breaking down.
Yes.
There was this feeling of like, you get this notification where they're like, well, we're heading out to open water. And I'm like, well, there's a 50-50 chance that we're not coming back. So that's when you start having 2 and 3 desserts at every meal, because you're like, well, if you got to go with a smile.
Exactly.
Think about these ships now. And you're talking about a ship that's 1,100 feet long in comparison to a wooden virtual dinghy compared to what these are today.
Oh, it's not even comparable. There's you can actually look it up. They've got comparisons of the Titanic, which was a luxury cruiser,
right,
against these cruise ships. Like, these cruise ships are just cities. Like, that's all they are. And if you've ever got a chance to see one in real life, they are absolutely massive. I mean, you kind of look at it for a split second, you're like, how does something that big float?
Right.
I mean, it is. Yeah, these things are massive. But then when you see some of these recreations of the ships they were in, you're like, I'm sorry, you crossed the Atlantic in that,
right?
And you're like, how do you even fit 100, almost 200 people on that boat? Because it's not just because it's them. Plus, you have the people who actually manned the ship.
Right. Well, it's we can as we wind down tonight and let people get back to what's most important. That's time with their families. The thing I want to say is, if there's anything that we get out of this time, I hope we learn to forgive ourselves and each other. I hope we learn to share that compassion once again with one another, because I feel like really what's happened is, when we talk about we're so separated, we're so varied in what we are. I don't know that. I just think that maybe what we've done is we've got a lot of people talking, maybe not as many listening, and we've sacrificed a lot of those patience for one another. Like saying that the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. But what I'm getting at is that there's an ability to step back and to recognize those things, and to be able to, you can trust but verify all day, but sometimes you just want a hug and get a sandwich and go to the movies with your friends. And I hope that what we do is we learn to remember how to be compassionate and rediscover what it means to spend time together. Because I think when this clears, and it will, we will get past this. We don't know how, we don't know when, we don't have the specifics yet, but it's coming into light. And I hope that we remember how to forgive, because it's for us. Forgiveness is for us. That resiliency comes from being able to also forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And we need that kind of resiliency as a nation, as a race, as a species, as a human race. We need that ability, and we need to make sure that we have it finely cultivated.
Couldn't agree more. Well, you know what? We're almost 40 minutes into this, and I think we need to let people get back to either baking their pumpkin pies, or if they're listening to this on Thursday for some strange reason, eating their pumpkin pies.
Yeah, right.
It's like, go spend time with your family. People don't listen to two jackanapes talk about politics, man. This is Thanksgiving. Let's be thankful to God, and let's enjoy our families. Let's enjoy our lives.
Absolutely.
Let's put our focus on where it should be. Everything in proportion. All right, Nick. We'll catch you next week. Everyone else, stay out there. Yes, Anthony, eat your pie right now. In fact, you should always be eating pie. Just just let everyone know. Every once in a while, you just got to eat pie. It'll be okay.
We have a special thanks and a shout out to a very special guest of the show, and we appreciate that. There is no question for any of you who know this fine gentleman that they probably started eating pie 4-5 days ago, and I don't expect that to stop. So, guys, peace and love to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless. Be safe. Alex, my friend, my teammate, peace and love to your beautiful family, and everybody out there. We will catch you on the flip side.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.